Have you ever wondered why you react the way you do, even when you know you should? Why some thoughts feel impossible to control? And why certain habits keep repeating, no matter how hard you try to change them? Welcome to today's book summary, Mind Decoded, a deep dive into the hidden psychological patterns that silently shape your decisions, emotions, relationships, and identity. This book uncovers the mental programming you never knew existed, the subconscious rules that guide your behavior, and the invisible forces influencing your everyday life. If you've ever felt stuck in old habits, confused by your own thoughts, or curious about what truly drives human behavior, this summary will change the way you understand your mind forever. Because once you learn the code behind your thoughts, you can finally rewrite your life. Let's unlock your mind coded. Chapter 1: The Invisible Mind: How Your Thoughts Shape Your Reality. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly realized the only thing standing between you and the life you want is the way you think? Not your circumstances, not your past, not your luck, just your thoughts. Most people never discover this truth, but Chapter 1 of Mind Decoded forces you to see it clearly. This chapter opens with a bold idea. Your mind is creating your reality long before your actions ever do. We like to believe we're logical, conscious, in control, but the author reveals that most of our life is shaped by silent, automatic patterns operating beneath our awareness. These invisible mental scripts influence everything: the choices we make, the risks we avoid, the people we trust, and even how we interpret the world around us. The chapter explains that your mind has two layers: the conscious mind, which feels like it's in charge, and the invisible mind, which actually runs about 90% of your life. This Mind Decoded is a collection of subtle thoughts, assumptions, emotional reactions, and belief systems that operate so quietly you rarely question them. But they filter every experience, shaping how you see yourself and what you believe is possible. For example, if your invisible mind holds the belief, "I'm not good enough," your brain will search for evidence to confirm it. You'll overlook opportunities, underestimate your abilities, and sabotage yourself without even noticing. If your invisible mind carries the thought, "People can't be trusted," you'll approach relationships with distance, doubt, and guardedness, often creating the very disconnection you fear. The chapter emphasizes that your thoughts don't just reflect your reality, they actively construct it. Two people can walk into the same situation and walk out with completely different experiences, simply because they filtered the moment through different invisible beliefs. The author calls this phenomenon the internal lens, the mental filter that colors everything you perceive. Your mind isn't just observing the world, it's shaping it with every interpretation, reaction, and expectation you hold. And the scariest part, most people live their entire life without ever realizing a lens exists. This chapter also breaks down how automatic thoughts, the tiny ideas that pop into your mind without your permission, create emotional loops. These loops influence your decisions long before you consciously think them through. A single thought like, "I'll embarrass myself," can create anxiety, which leads to avoidance, which leads to missed opportunities, which reinforces the belief that you can't handle challenges. You don't break the loop by forcing action. You break it by changing the thought that started the loop. The author argues that the moment you start paying attention to your inner dialogue, everything changes. You begin to see which thoughts are truly yours, and which ones were planted by childhood experiences, social conditioning, fear, or past pain. And that's the central message of Chapter 1. Your thoughts are not facts. Your beliefs are not permanent. Your mind is not fixed. You can rewrite the invisible patterns controlling your life. Once you learn to observe your thoughts instead of obeying them blindly, you gain something most people never achieve: mental freedom. The chapter ends with a powerful reminder. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You only need to change the one thought that is holding your life back the most. Because when you shift your internal world, your external world begins to transform with it. Chapter 2, Cognitive Biases, the hidden errors controlling your decisions. Have you ever been completely sure you were right, only to later discover you were absolutely wrong? The shocking part isn't that you made a mistake. The shocking part is that your brain convinced you it was the only logical decision. Chapter 2 reveals the uncomfortable truth. Most of your decisions aren't rational at all. They're controlled by invisible mental shortcuts called cognitive biases. This chapter exposes the hidden architecture behind your daily choices. We like to believe we are thinking logically, weighing facts, and making smart judgments, but the author shows that the brain is far more interested in speed than accuracy. To conserve energy, it relies on shortcuts, mental patterns that help you process information instantly but quietly distort your perception of reality. These shortcuts once helped our ancestors survive, but now they often lead us into predictable and avoidable mistakes. The chapter begins with confirmation bias, the tendency to search for and believe information that supports what you already think. You don't notice the full truth. You notice the truth that fits your current story. If you think someone doesn't like you, you'll notice every small action that confirms it and ignore everything that challenges it. If you believe you're unlucky, your mind will highlight every setback and filter out every opportunity. The author emphasizes that this bias doesn't just distort your opinions. It shapes your relationships, decisions, and even your self-image. Then the chapter dives into availability bias, the mental trap where you judge something as more important simply because it's easier to remember. Dramatic events, accidents, failures, rejections stick in your mind, so they feel more common than they truly are. This is why people fear flying more than driving, even though driving is far more dangerous. The brain mistakes vivid memories for frequent realities, creating unnecessary fear and skewed judgments. Another powerful bias in this chapter is the anchoring effect, the tendency for your mind to latch onto the first piece of information it receives and treat it as the anchor, even when it's irrelevant. A random number, a suggestion, a first impression, a past failure, each one can anchor your future expectations without you ever realizing it. This explains why first impressions are so hard to shake, why prices seem cheap or expensive based on what you saw first, and why people often underestimate their potential simply because they anchored themselves to an old identity. The author also introduces the halo effect, the bias where one positive trait blinds you to everything else. Someone attractive seems more trustworthy. Someone successful seems more intelligent. Someone confident seems more capable. Your brain fills in the gaps with assumptions that feel true even when they're not. Without noticing, you don't judge people as they are. You judge them as your mind assumes they must be. Throughout the chapter, one message becomes painfully clear. These biases don't just influence your decisions, they shape your entire worldview. They determine who you trust, what opportunities you see, what you fear, how you interpret experiences, and even how you define yourself. And because they operate automatically, they feel like truth when they are actually distortions. But the author doesn't leave you in the dark. The chapter emphasizes that the first step to escaping cognitive biases is awareness. When you start questioning your initial reactions, your automatic beliefs, and your emotional impulses, you begin to create space between your mind and your decisions. You start seeing the difference between what is actually happening and what your brain assumes is happening. And that is the core lesson of Chapter 2. Your mind is not always telling you the truth. It's telling you the version of the truth that feels easiest, fastest, and safest. But once you learn to recognize these mental errors, you regain control over your decisions and ultimately your life. Chapter 3, Emotional Triggers, Why You React Before You Think. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and later wondered, why did I react like that? Or felt an emotion rise inside you so fast that you couldn't control it? Anger, fear, shame, defensiveness, almost as if your body responded before your mind even understood what was happening. Chapter 3 exposes the truth most people never realize. Your emotional reactions are not random. They are triggers, deeply rooted psychological patterns that control you long before you consciously respond. This chapter begins by explaining that emotional triggers are not signs of weakness. They are signs of unresolved experiences stored in your subconscious. They are the echoes of old fears, memories, beliefs, and wounds that were never processed consciously. When something in the present resembles a past emotional imprint, your brain reacts instantly, automatically, and overwhelmingly. You don't think first, you feel first. The author explains that the mind evolved this way for survival. In dangerous situations, hesitation could cost your life. So the brain learned to react instantly to anything that resembled a threat. But in the modern world, these instinctive reactions often get misapplied. Instead of reacting to a predator, you react to criticism. Instead of reacting to danger, you react to rejection. Instead of protecting yourself physically, you protect your ego emotionally. The chapter details how triggers hijack the logical mind. When something hits a sensitive emotional wound, your brain shifts into survival mode: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. In these moments, you're no longer responding to the situation in front of you. You're reacting to something buried behind you. A harsh tone from someone today might awaken the same fear you felt as a child when someone spoke to you that way. A small rejection might activate an old belief: I'm not worthy. A minor disagreement might ignite a deeper story: no one understands me. The author calls this phenomenon emotional time travel. Your mind pulls an old emotion into a new moment, tricking you into believing the past is happening again. This is why emotional triggers feel bigger than the situation. They unleash a whole history in a matter of seconds. One of the most important parts of this chapter explains that emotional triggers reveal your unhealed parts. If criticism triggers you, it might mean your self-worth is fragile. If being ignored triggers you, it might mean you fear abandonment. If losing control triggers you, it might mean you were raised in chaos. Triggers aren't enemies. They are messengers pointing to the areas of your life that need attention. The chapter then shifts to how triggers shape your behavior. Emotional reactions can sabotage relationships, limit your confidence, and make you say or do things you later regret. Because when a trigger takes over, you stop responding to reality and start reacting to an emotional memory. You defend yourself even when you're not under attack. You withdraw even when no one is rejecting you. You explode even when the situation doesn't call for anger. But the author also provides a powerful insight. You can't control your triggers, but you can control the space between the trigger and your reaction. That small space, sometimes barely a second, is where emotional intelligence begins. Learning to pause, breathe, observe, and interpret your emotions transforms your reactions into responses. Instead of letting your past dictate your present, you begin to choose your actions consciously. The chapter ends with a profound reminder. Your emotions are not the problem. Your lack of awareness of them is. When you understand your triggers, you understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you gain the ability to change the patterns that have silently shaped your life for years. Because emotional triggers don't reveal your weakness, they reveal where your healing begins. Chapter 4: The Subconscious Blueprint. Beliefs you don't know you have. What if the life you're living right now, your habits, your confidence, your fears, your relationships, even your sense of success, wasn't truly chosen by you? What if it was shaped by a silent blueprint written long before you were old enough to question it? Chapter 4 uncovers a truth most people never dare to explore. Your subconscious mind has been running your life with beliefs you never consciously agreed to. This chapter opens by explaining that the subconscious mind is not just a deeper level of thinking. It is the operating system of your entire psychological world. It is where your earliest experiences, emotional memories, learned patterns, and absorbed beliefs are stored. And while the conscious mind analyzes, plans, and reasons, it is the subconscious mind that ultimately decides how you behave, what you fear, how you respond, and what you believe is possible. The author describes the subconscious as a blueprint, a fixed internal design that silently determines your outer reality. Your self-worth, your confidence, your boundaries, your expectations in relationships, your belief about money, your view of love, your fear of failure. All of these come from subconscious instructions formed during childhood, shaped by repetition, environment, and emotional experiences. You didn't choose this blueprint. It was given to you. If you grew up hearing money is hard to earn, your subconscious accepted it as truth. If you were told don't make mistakes, your mind formed a fear of failure. If you felt ignored, you learned to stay small to avoid disappointment. If you were praised only for being good, you learned to suppress your needs to gain approval. These beliefs don't sit on the surface. They sink into the subconscious and become the lens through which you interpret the world. And because they operate in the background, you rarely question them. You mistake them for your personality, when in reality, they are just internalized rules. The chapter then reveals a shocking insight. Your subconscious does not care whether a belief is true, helpful, or healthy. It only cares that it feels familiar. This is why people repeat toxic relationship patterns, sabotage opportunities, or stay stuck in cycles they say they want to escape. The subconscious seeks comfort in the known, even when the known is painful. The author explains that this blueprint runs in automatic loops. If your subconscious believes you are not good enough, you will unknowingly make choices that reinforce that belief. If it believes you are destined to fail, you will sabotage your progress before you reach success. If it believes love is conditional, you will chase people who withhold affection. These patterns don't happen because you want them. They happen because your subconscious is repeating what it believes is true. But the chapter also offers hope. Blueprints can be rewritten. The first step is awareness, recognizing that your reactions and patterns have deeper origins. The author encourages you to pay attention to moments of emotional intensity, jealousy, insecurity, anger, avoidance, overthinking, defensiveness. These emotional spikes are not random. They are signposts pointing directly to the beliefs buried beneath them. The chapter stresses that every subconscious belief originally came from protection. The mind created these beliefs to help you survive emotionally, even if they hold you back today. Understanding this allows you to replace judgment with compassion and curiosity. And that leads to the chapter's core message. You are not broken, you are programmed. And every program can be rewritten once you become aware of it. The author ends by reminding you that the subconscious blueprint is powerful, but not permanent. The moment you begin questioning your old assumptions, your blueprint starts to crack open, and the parts of you that were hidden, suppressed, or forgotten finally have the chance to come forward. Because the greatest freedom you can ever experience is not escaping the world. It's escaping the old instructions that shaped you without your permission. Chapter 5, The Habit Loop, The Psychology of Automatic Behavior. Have you ever done something and only realized afterward that you had no idea why you did it? Maybe you opened your phone without thinking, ate something you didn't really want, or reacted to someone in a way you later regretted. What if I told you that nearly half of what you do every single day isn't a choice? It's a habit loop running your life on autopilot. Chapter 5 exposes one of the most fascinating truths about human psychology. Your brain is designed to automate behavior, and once a habit takes root, it becomes a self-sustaining cycle that runs in the background like an invisible engine. This chapter breaks down how habits form, why they're so hard to break, and how they control far more of your life than you realize. The author begins by explaining the basic structure of the habit loop: cue, routine, reward. A cue triggers the brain, the routine is the action you perform, and the reward is the satisfaction or relief you get afterward. Your brain repeats habits not because they are good or bad, but because they are efficient. The mind loves patterns because they save mental energy. So once a behavior creates a reward, even a tiny one, the brain encodes it as a shortcut. The interesting part: most cues are silent and unnoticed. A certain emotion, a time of day, a location, even a specific person can trigger an automatic habit without you realizing it. Feeling stressed, your brain cues the urge to scroll social media, snack, or distract yourself. Feeling alone, you might reach out to someone unhealthy because that familiarity brings emotional reward. Feeling bored, your mind seeks stimulation in the same old places. The chapter highlights something powerful. Habits aren't formed by willpower. They're formed by repetition paired with emotional reward. That's why breaking a habit feels like fighting gravity. Your brain is literally wired to repeat it. And the more it repeats, the stronger and more automatic the loop becomes. The author describes how habits shape identity. Without noticing, people start to see themselves through their habits. I procrastinate, so I'm lazy. I can't wake up early, so I'm not disciplined. I overthink everything, so I'm weak. But the book argues the opposite. These patterns don't define who you are. They simply reveal the loops your brain has practiced for years. Identity does not create habits. Habits create identity. One of the most eye-opening insights in this chapter is how emotional habits are just as real as physical ones. Some people are addicted to anger because it gives them a sense of control. Others are addicted to worrying because it feels like a way to prepare. Some cling to self-doubt because it protects them from taking risks. These emotional routines offer internal rewards: safety, familiarity, or predictability, even if they cause suffering. Then the chapter shifts into how habit loops can be transformed. The author emphasizes that you don't break habits by force. You break them by redesigning the loop. You identify the cue, become conscious of the routine, and replace the old reward with a healthier one. Awareness is the first crack in the autopilot system. Once you spot the loop, you interrupt it. And every interruption weakens the old pathway while strengthening a new one. But the book also offers a deeper truth. The reason people can't change their habits is because their environment keeps triggering the same cues. Your surroundings, your social circle, your routines, even your digital patterns all shape your behavior. Change the cue, and the habit loses its power. This is why the author calls environment the architect of habits. Chapter 5 ends with a powerful reminder. Your life today is a collection of habit loops, but your future can be shaped by new ones. Habits are not chains, they're tools. Once you understand how they work, you stop being controlled by your automatic behaviors and start designing them. Because the moment you realize your habits are programmable, you also realize your entire life is. Chapter 6, the social influence, how people shape you without your permission. What if I told you that many of your opinions, your habits, your fears, and even your dreams never truly belong to you? What if the people around you, your friends, your family, your culture, even strangers, have been shaping your identity in ways you never noticed? Chapter 6 reveals a mind-bending truth. You are far less independent than you believe. The chapter begins by exposing the invisible power of social influence, the subtle, constant pressure from the world around you that molds your thoughts and emotions without your awareness. Humans are wired for belonging. Our brains evolved in groups, so acceptance meant survival. And because of this deep biological programming, humans learn to mirror the values, beliefs, and behaviors of the people closest to them, even when those behaviors go against their own desires. The author explains that social influence doesn't feel like influence. It feels like normal. You think your choices are your own, but often they are echoes of the environment you grew up in. If your circle sees ambition as arrogance, you learn to shrink. If your family fears risk, you become cautious. If your friends joke about success being unrealistic, you stop dreaming too loudly. Social influence works quietly, not by force but by emotional gravity. Chapter introduces the idea of social mirrors. Every person you interact with reflects back a version of you, sometimes accurate, sometimes distorted. Over time, these reflections shape your identity. If people treat you like you're capable, you start believing it. If they treat you like you're a joke, you play the part. Even silence from others can influence you by reinforcing the belief that your voice doesn't matter. And the most unsettling part is that this shaping begins long before you ever question it. The author then dives into conformity, the human tendency to adjust behavior to fit in. You laugh because others laugh, you agree because everyone else does, and you doubt yourself because the group disagrees. This isn't weakness, it's biology. The brain rewards conformity with feelings of safety and belonging. But over time, conformity can slowly suffocate authenticity, turning you into a version of yourself that feels socially acceptable but emotionally hollow. The chapter also explores the role of emotional contagion, a phenomenon where moods and mindsets spread through groups like invisible waves. Being around negative people makes you negative. Being around anxious people raises your stress. Being around ambitious people makes you dream bigger. Without realizing it, you absorb the emotional climate of your environment. Your inner world reacts to the outer world automatically. Then comes one of the most powerful insights in the chapter. Your environment is not neutral. It is constantly teaching you what is normal. If everyone around you settles, you assume settling is normal. If everyone complains, you learn to complain. If everyone hides their emotions, you learn to suppress yours. Social influence creates your personal baseline, shaping the behaviors you consider natural and the dreams you consider possible. But the author doesn't leave the reader helpless. The chapter shifts into how awareness can break this invisible influence. By stepping back and observing how people around you speak, react, think, and behave, you begin to see the patterns you unconsciously copied. Ask yourself, who made me believe this? Did I choose this value, or did I inherit it? Is this fear mine or someone else? Is this goal something I want, or something I was told to want? When you begin questioning the origin of your beliefs, you start reclaiming your identity from the world that shaped it. The chapter ends with a powerful message. You are influenced by every person you allow into your life. Some people pull you upward with possibility. Some drag you downward with limitations. Some keep you stuck simply by refusing to grow themselves. And until you become conscious of these forces, you will continue absorbing them automatically. But once you understand social influence, you gain the ability to choose your influences. And that choice can reshape your future. Because the moment you decide who gets access to your mind is the moment you stop being shaped without your permission. Chapter 7, Personality Patterns, Understanding Who You Really Are. What if the person you think you are, the way you talk, act, react, and navigate life, isn't actually you at all? What if your personality is not a fixed identity, but a survival strategy you learned long before you even understood you were learning it? Chapter 7 reveals a shocking truth. Who you believe yourself to be is often just who you needed to be. This chapter begins with a powerful idea. Personality is not something you're born with. It's something you build, and most of it is built unconsciously. From childhood, every experience shapes the patterns you adopt, how you express emotion, how you handle conflict, how you seek approval, how you avoid pain. What we later call personality is just the sum of these learned responses. The author explains that personality isn't a single trait or label. It's a complex system of patterns designed to protect you. Some people become the strong one because they grew up believing vulnerability wasn't safe. Others become the quiet one because attention brought criticism. Some become the people pleaser, learning that approval ensures peace. Others become the thinker, hiding behind logic because emotions once felt overwhelming. These patterns feel natural, but they were crafted through necessity, not choice. The chapter dives into the psychology of pattern formation. Every time an emotional response works, meaning it helps you avoid pain or gain acceptance, the brain stores it as part of your personality blueprint. Over time, these patterns become so automatic that you mistake them for identity. But the truth is far more complex. You behave the way you do because your younger self believed it was the safest way to navigate the world. The author emphasizes that personality patterns are not flaws, they are adaptations. The overthinker learned to anticipate danger. The perfectionist learned that mistakes led to rejection. The overly independent person learned that relying on others meant disappointment. The conflict-avoidant person learned that silence kept the peace. These patterns were intelligent at the time. They helped you survive emotionally. But as you grow older, what once protected you can begin to limit you. The same walls that shielded you become the walls that trap you. The chapter also explores how personality is shaped not only by trauma or pressure, but also by expectations. The roles assigned to you, the responsible one, the smart one, the troublemaker, the sensitive one, often become self-fulfilling identities. Without realizing it, you begin performing the version of yourself others expect, even if it suffocates your true nature. This leads to one of the most important insights of the chapter. Most people don't know who they truly are. They only know who they learn to be. The author then guides the reader through the process of deconstructing these personality patterns. The first step is observation, catching the moments when your reactions feel automatic or exaggerated. The second step is questioning, asking where this pattern came from, what purpose it once served, and whether it still serves you today. And the third step is choice, realizing you are no longer bound to the same emotional strategies you developed as a child. This chapter argues that true self-discovery is not about adding more traits to your identity. It's about peeling back the layers of learned behavior to uncover the authentic self that exists beneath them. Authenticity isn't something you create, it's something you rediscover. The author ends the chapter with a profound reminder. Your personality is not your destiny, it's your history. And history can be understood, rewritten, and reshaped. When you finally see your patterns for what they are, echoes of a younger you gain the freedom to choose who you want to be now. Because understanding your personality isn't about defining yourself more clearly. It's about freeing yourself from the version of you that life forced you to become. Chapter 8: The MindShift Method. Rewriting thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. What if changing your life didn't require a miracle, a breakdown, or a dramatic turning point? What if transformation could begin with a single mental shift? One powerful moment where you stop running on autopilot and start rewriting the code inside your mind. Chapter 8 introduces the MindShift Method, a framework that shows you exactly how thoughts, emotions, and behaviors can be reprogrammed. Not someday, but right now. This chapter begins by challenging one of the biggest myths in psychology, the belief that change is slow, painful, and complicated. The author argues the opposite, that your mind is designed for adaptation, and once you understand how your inner system works, transformation becomes not only possible but inevitable. The MindShift Method is introduced as a step-by-step process for breaking old mental patterns and creating new ones that align with the person you want to become. The chapter starts by explaining the triad at the core of human experience: thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. These three elements form a loop that reinforces itself endlessly. A single negative thought triggers an emotional reaction. That emotion leads to a behavior, and that behavior reinforces the original thought, strengthening the cycle. The mind repeats this loop because it seeks predictability, even when the pattern is harmful. The MindShift Method begins with awareness, the moment you notice the loop instead of acting from it. Awareness is not just recognition, it is interruption. When you step outside the automatic cycle and observe your inner world without judgment, the loop loses its power. This chapter emphasizes that awareness is the first doorway to freedom because you cannot change a pattern you refuse to see. The second step is identifying the root thought behind the emotion. Instead of asking, "Why am I reacting like this?" the author encourages you to ask, "What thought created this emotion?" You begin tracing your emotional responses back to the beliefs behind them, beliefs about worth, safety, love, success, failure. Many of these beliefs were formed in childhood, and the mind never questioned them. The MindShift method teaches you to challenge them. Once the root thought is identified, the third step is emotional decoding, interpreting what your emotion is signaling. Emotions are not the enemy. They are messengers carrying information about your needs, boundaries, desires, and fears. Instead of suppressing emotions or being controlled by them, the MindShift method teaches you to listen to them. When you understand an emotion's message, you can respond consciously instead of reacting blindly. The fourth step involves behavioral redirection. The chapter explains that behavior is not changed by force. It is changed by designing alternative actions that support the new belief you want to adopt. This means replacing avoidance with small steps forward, replacing self-sabotage with self-support, and replacing fear-based reactions with intentional responses. The mind learns through repetition, so every conscious action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. The final step in the MindShift method is integration. This is where new thoughts, emotions, and behaviors begin working together, forming a new internal loop. The author emphasizes that integration is the point where change becomes effortless, not because the old patterns disappear overnight, but because the new patterns become familiar enough to feel natural. Consistency turns rewiring into reality. The chapter stresses one core truth. You are not fighting your mind. You are teaching it a new way to operate. And the mind learns best not through pressure, but through clarity, repetition, and emotional alignment. By the end of the chapter, the reader understands that the MindShift method is not a quick fix. It is a blueprint for psychological self-mastery. It gives you the power to catch your old patterns, understand them, question them, and ultimately replace them. The transformation is not external. It begins inside, in the invisible space where thoughts become emotions and emotions become actions. The chapter ends with a powerful message. Your mind is not a prison. It is a system, and systems can be redesigned. Once you learn to shift your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors consciously, your entire life begins to shift with them. Because real change doesn't happen when the world changes. Real change happens the moment you do. And that brings us to the end of this journey, a journey into the hidden layers of the human mind. From unconscious beliefs to emotional patterns, from social influence to the habit loops that run our days, this book has shown one life-changing truth. You are not stuck with the mind you inherited. You can rewrite it. Every chapter reveals a different doorway into self-awareness. You learned how thoughts shape reality, how subconscious beliefs become invisible architects of your life, how emotions trigger reactions before logic can catch up, how habits automate half of your actions, how people around you shape your identity without your permission, and finally, how the MindShift method gives you the power to redesign your inner world consciously. If there's one message to walk away with, it's this. Your mind is not final, it is flexible. It can be rewired, reshaped, and rebuilt from the inside out. You are capable of far more transformation than you've ever been told. And if this summary helped you understand yourself a little deeper, if it sparked curiosity, clarity, or even a moment of reflection, then imagine what other books could do for you. Imagine how much your life would change if you made learning and self-growth a habit. So if you want more powerful book summaries like this, more psychology, more self-development, more life-changing insights, then make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay connected. Because every week, we break down a new book that can shift the way you think, live, and understand yourself. And remember, your next breakthrough isn't waiting somewhere out there. It's waiting inside your mind, ready for you to unlock it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next summary, where your next transformation begins.